Welcome back to Vision Auto Garage. In today's episode, I'm going to be fitting this front-mounted intercooler into the roof of the Rover Metro. Much like the exhaust, this is going to be function over form, and I've got some very good reasons for it. The intercooler was the largest I could find for under £100, and it seems reasonable quality. It has cast alley end tanks and a tube and fin style core, which is 510mm wide, 300mm tall and 76mm deep, with 3-inch inlet and outlet, and M8 bosses welded on either side. The ideal spot for this front-mounted intercooler, funny enough, is at the front of the car, but for me that's just not going to work. There's two reasons for that. Firstly, I just don't have the space for it, and secondly, if it was to be at the front of the car, I'd have to run some really long boost pipes all the way forward from the turbo, and that's going to cause some massive turbo lag. As the exhaust gases are spinning up the turbine, the compressor is squeezing air into a smaller space, which is increasing its pressure. If I were to have several metres of boost pipe running to the front of the car and back, it's going to take a lot longer for the compressor to squeeze enough air into that larger space to create the same pressure. Imagine if you had two party balloons, one small and one large. It might take you 2 breaths to inflate the small balloon, but 5 to inflate the large, and it's the same principle here. It may only take a second for the turbo to build up enough pressure in a short intercooler run, compared to 3 or 4 seconds for a long intercooler run, and that's going to be really noticeable when you drive the car. Like when designing any system, there's a compromise to be had, and with my intercooler setup, it's a trade-off between airflow and therefore charge temperature, and positioning, therefore turbo lag. I believe positioning my intercooler in the roof with a scoop to direct airflow is a great compromise between airflow and charge temperature, and positioning and turbo lag. I need to cut an opening the same size as the intercooler core. I've marked it out central and square on the roof. My first plan was to drill a hole or two and insert a jigsaw blade and cut along my marks, but the jigsaw is one of my least used tools and I had no metal cutting blades for it, so I returned to the old faithful grinder. Before showering the engine in sparks, I've covered it with a cloth. I'm trying to cut reasonably accurately because I need to make a good seal between the roof and the intercooler so that air flows through the core, but it's going to be covered by a scoop of undetermined size and aesthetics. A big hole in the roof has made it even more flexible than it already was, and with the weight of the intercooler underneath it, I doubt it will hold up without reinforcement. I'll try and use the section I cut out to make a bracket for the intercooler and reinforce the roof at the same time. If it works, I'll make something similar from a suitable section of angle. A very rough bracket was cut and folded and test fitted. It will give a good template for the final version, which I'll need 2 of, front and rear. I'm going to pop rivet the bracket on, which will allow me to adjust and remove it if necessary. It's clamped in place before drilling 5mm holes for each rivet. I like to think I'm keen on safety and personal protection equipment, especially working alone and having learnt my lesson twice before. But be it the weather or just carelessness, I'm not wearing any gloves and I'm not thinking things through. On this last hole, I'm holding up the bracket to the roof and drilling down through it. The drill does its thing to the metal and my thumb. After some first aid, I finish off the last rivet and decide to cut my losses. It's lunchtime, it's approaching 30 degrees, and my thumb hurts. I'll finish this off later in the week. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.